Hello everyone, my name is Kong Shrinani and welcome to my YouTube channel Neuro Chat with AG. On this channel, I plan to cover topics that are closest to my heart and support the neurodiverse community. Topics related to neurodiversity, autism, late autism diagnosis, and autism in women and girls. I will interview thought leaders, esteemed researchers, scientists, professors, doctors, and psychologists and seek their views and updates on their latest work and research. I will also chat with parents of neurodiverse kids and adults and talk about experiences of neurodiverse individuals. Lastly, keeping inclusivity as a topmost priority, we might also discuss controversial disparate views for a collective understanding of issues and respect for diverse views. All the views and topics discussed are for informational purposes only. If you are interested in watching more quality content on this topic, please hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to press the bell icon to be notified whenever a new video is uploaded. Please also share the channel with your friends, family, and social media platforms. Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching this episode. And today I have two amazing guests, Miss Monisha Gandhi and Miss Gopika Kapoor. And if they both could introduce themselves.
The mom of a 20-year-old young man who has Down syndrome. And I am the co-founder of BuddyUp Network, which is a social app for people with disabilities and their caregivers. Prior to starting BuddyUp, I ran a hand embroidery export firm, but I don't do that anymore. So that's a quick introduction on me.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Gopika. I am also a co-founder of BuddyUp, and I am mom to an amazing autistic 20-year-old as well as an amazing neurotypical 20-year-old, they're twins. And I have worked as a therapist with autistic people and their families, and also am a qualified narrative therapist, and I work with families of neurodivergent individuals as well as autistic adults.
Could you both please share a little bit more of your background and what made you kind of get involved into working in this field?
I'll go first. My son,
I'll add.
Yeah, my son who's 20 went to a mainstream school, and he's very social and he likes meeting people, and he had a bunch of friends at school. But I anticipated a time that would come when his classmates, his neurotypical classmates, were going to move on and go to college and take a slightly different path from the one that he was going to take. And in anticipation of this time when he would suddenly feel this vacuum, I decided to actively look for a peer group and a friend group for him. And I really didn't know where to start looking. I kind of went onto Facebook sites, I asked around, sent feelers, really didn't know where to look. Reached out to a pediatrician who's also a friend and asked her to, pull up some names of young people who were in his age group. And she introduced me to Gopika. And really our experience of our boys becoming friends kind of really taught us that this is something that is ridiculously important, but no one focuses on. And there's no way to actually, make friends for people who have disabilities. There isn't a platform where they can reach out to other people. There isn't a platform for caregivers. And we felt, why is a platform like this not there? And that's sort of the reason that we decided to create this. Yeah.
So my journey is somewhat similar. My son is on the spectrum. We discovered this when he was 3 months old, and throughout his childhood, there was always this emphasis on him making friends. Again, him being on the spectrum it was difficult for him, and at some point of time I just kind of gave up because it was just very stressful, and for him and for me, I think. And then Vibha, who's our developmental pediatrician and a friend, the common friend Monisha was talking about, said, why don't Veer and Mihan, who are our boys, meet? And when they met, it was really quite magical. It has been since they were, they've been friends for 5 years. It's been really amazing for both of them, for us as well. It's been a great support. And we thought, why not extend this to other people? Because everybody doesn't have a Vibha in their lives. Everybody doesn't live in areas where it is easy to be able to make friends like this. And so that's how BuddyUp was born.
And I also wanted to ask what role you think that, community and connection plays in well-being, because so being social is such a crucial part of um everyone's lives. When I think of not being able to spend time with my friends, or being disconnected from them, that makes me feel really sad. So I feel like this kind of lack of friendship, or losing out on those friends, could have or had some very negative impacts on just.
So yes, I think I think everybody knows that loneliness is a big thing in the disability community. It's, I mean, not just in the disability community, generally speaking. I think people have I think it's quite well established that there's a loneliness epidemic out there, and the fact of people not having those social connections is very detrimental to their well-being. I think that's also quite established. We've seen that, and we've seen on the flip side, when that exists, what a huge difference it makes to people's lives. We've seen even people who, so-called, socially, people without, who appear not to be very social, actually do seek out that human connection. We've seen that on the app as well. People sometimes have limited communication skills, but they do reach out to even send a message every day. It could be just literally like a good morning, how are you doing? And at night, I'll get a message with a similar, short note. So that human connection is so important for a lot of people that it really kind of is something that people should really have in their lives.
In the autism community, or having a child with autism, from what I've seen with my own experience, is that it is extremely difficult for autistic individuals to make those connections. It's not that they don't want to, it's also the need, there is a part of the brain which makes it difficult for them to really be able to, which inhibits this. And so I think those two opposing forces makes up for a very difficult situation. There is also a lot of caregiver isolation, because there are sensory inputs which are coming into these individuals, which are very different from neurotypical individuals. These, again, make going out into social spaces kind of difficult for them, as well as a lot of behaviors. And so not only are the autistic individuals isolated, there's also the isolation amongst the caregivers. And that really makes them extremely lonely, extremely isolated. And like Monisha said, there is an epidemic of isolation. There is a sense of extreme loneliness and being the only one kind of facing this. And so really that what the app is doing is not only just connecting these individuals, also connecting the caregivers to create that sense of community and to build on those relationships where even one person whom you can just message at the end of the day, or meet up with, or call, and just say, you know what, I've had a great day, or I had a really bad day. Somebody just to share your feelings, your emotions, your day with, can make such a difference to one's sense of well-being.
Yeah. I'll add, that very often, at least amongst, I'm talking from an Indian context, I think, when we look at individuals with any kind of special needs or any kind of neurodivergence, a lot of them are, pretty much hanging out with their parents as they grow older. You'll see, mums and dads and this older individual, going along with them at their social events. But actually, what each person wants is a peer group that of their own, right? Of their own age group. They may be, different in some aspects, but they're very like their peers in every other aspect of wanting everything that their peers want, right? Like my son wants exactly what his sister has. going out for coffee or going out for a movie or going out dancing, or the kinds of things that other individuals, they're very cognizant of what other individuals are in their age group are doing, and they want to be a part of it. So how do they find those people? They don't want to hang out with their parents all the time, right? They love their parents, but their peer group has to be different from their parents' friends. Um, so again, I think we underestimate how important it is for them to have those exact same experiences um, as other young people around them. And they feel that. So I feel like, again, coming back to our app, it helps you find people who will, be able to fill those needs for you based off, being in the neighborhood, being of a similar age group, sharing some interests, and you can sort of try to make those connections so you don't have to feel, alone in that sense.
Thank you so much for sharing some of these, like, I guess, challenges and experiences that kind of motivated you to take action. And so you created this platform, BuddyUp. And so could you tell us about the mission behind that and, like, how it kind of works?
Sure, I'll take that. I think BuddyUp really works on the premise that nobody should be alone and we all need friends. No matter who we are, what our abilities in the neurotypical world are, we all need friends. We've had people writing into us saying, but my child can't speak. And so we say, so what? It doesn't matter. We've got one person who's this young woman who's autistic and non-speaking, who's found somebody through the app in her neighborhood who's again autistic and non-speaking, and the two of them are communicating on it. So it really doesn't matter, because the need to communicate does not extend only to speech, nor does it extend to a particular kind of cognitive level or a particular kind of condition. So I think the idea is that we all need friends, we all need connections, and the mission and the values behind it is that it should be a space which is safe, which is accessible, and which is inclusive. And what we mean by that is that anybody who's on the app should feel 100% that they are in a safe environment. We've ensured a lot of safety checks to make sure that it is a very safe place for people with disabilities whom we know are vulnerable. Accessibility, we have ensured accessibility for different kinds of disabilities and done a lot of testing with them. And when we say inclusive, we've also included people who might not come there's a Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act in India, which has lists 21 disabilities, but we've also included other conditions which could cause loneliness and isolation, which include things like cancer. There are people with cancer who might experience loneliness. There are people with HIV/AIDS, which now a lot of stigma may have reduced, but there's still a lot of stigma surrounding that. People with mental illness, and all these conditions which can cause that kind of loneliness would come into that. So we really want it to be safe, accessible, and inclusive.
Yeah. Yes, and I'll also add that, through the app, I think what happens is that you can reach out to people across the disability community. So, because I have a son with Down syndrome, I think typically being a parent of a child with one particular disability, you tend to look in that group, and all your information comes from that group. As you get on parent support groups around Down syndrome, and maybe Gopika would have been on parent support groups around autism. And what we saw with our own boys was that this cross disability friendship is never looked at as a thing, and can be actually quite powerful. There's no reason why someone with autism can't be friends with someone who has Down syndrome, or someone who's visually impaired can't be friends with someone who has autism. It's just two people that have a similar need, have some sort of shared experience, could end up being very good friends to each other. And this platform will sort of allow you to do that.
What do you think, to both of you as founders, has been the most surprising lesson you've learned through this journey?
I'll add one thing. I'll just say, we started out as a friendship app, and we're also noticing that, being the parents of young when we started our app, our boys started thinking about this idea to make a platform like this. Our boys were about, it was during the lockdown, maybe they were uh,
15,
14
they
or
were
15,
15 years old.
and now they're
Yeah.
20. And so we kind of focused on friendship, which we think is the most important thing. But we're getting a lot of feedback from our data existing users that they're also starting to look for relationships, and we kind of hadn't, being parents, we didn't think of it. We didn't sort of think that that was an area that we wanted to focus on. So that's something that we've said, okay, we're constantly like listening to feedback and kind of trying to tweak ourselves to you know um, cater to the needs of our users. So that's something that we're actually actively thinking about. Maybe we need to add some way that people could seek partners, or just relationships on the app that are in addition to friend. I mean, friendship, of course, is very important. Every relationship should start with friendship, but sometimes people are looking for specifically for maybe a date, or my own son, for example, said, yeah, I've been working on this app for a while, and he said, but why didn't you make a dating app? So I mean, so things like that, we're kind of sometimes we're kind of
Yeah.
thinking, we started off in one direction, and we're kind of constantly listening to what our users are telling us, and we're kind of maybe having to rethink a few things, or do things a bit differently as we go along. So that was just one thing that sort of I thought of straight off. Yeah. Anything?
I think for me, what has been really surprising, and again, I don't want to sound kind of patronizing or ableist in any way when I say this, is that over the last 4 months since the app launched, we've been promoting it in different places. We've been talking to different people, organizations, and a lot of people with disabilities. And these are people across disabilities whom we would ordinarily not have the opportunity to interact with. And I think for me, it has been so beautifully surprising how they have enriched my life. The typical attitude that people have for people with disabilities is one of, um, you know, they say it's empathy, but actually it's sympathy cloaked. I mean, it's like sympathy which is cloaked in the cover of empathy. Or in India particularly, it's this whole kind of pitying attitude, which is really awful. But I think Monisha will agree. We've met some amazing, amazing people who just happen to have a disability, and they are just smart, they're funny, they're sassy, they're really amazing human beings. And I'm really glad that I've had this opportunity to be able to meet these people, and it's really been surprising that they're around, and they've just not been in my I guess in my circle or in my worldview. And it's been a great opportunity to meet them.
That's actually a really great segue into our next question. So, to imagine, like, let's say, someone's trying to find, some amazing people that they want to, to make friends with, to spend time with. So, what kind of process would they go through, after, going into the app to, make their friends? And, what different methods do they have based on, like, if they don't, like, if they're minimally speaking or non-speaking and they don't want to, like, talk or have a video call, or they're not comfortable being on camera?
So they make a profile on the app, and they once they're on the app, they've made their profile. Um, they can search for friends based on different criteria like age, distance from them, interest, disability, gender. And once they do that, they'll find a bunch of profiles which show up, and they can then buddy up with them. They can send them a friend request, and people will also send them friend requests. They will send them a buddy request, which they can accept or they can decline. And then once they've made that match, they can chat with them on the app. The video call feature is just for the safety angle. So it is just to be able to help them identify that the person who they are chatting with is in fact the person they say they are. But other than that, they can chat on the app, or they can keep chatting.
there is a voice note feature. So they can send voice notes to the other person, and they can stay on the app for as long as they want. They don't need to reveal their numbers. They don't need to give out their addresses or anything like that. And then at whatever point they feel comfortable, they can transition to a public place where they can meet and take the friendship offline. But there is the option to only find online friends. I mean, they can just be, like we used to have pen friends back in the day. They can just have, chat buddies and stay on the app and just chat every day and just talk about how they're feeling.
What have been kind of some of the most significant challenges you faced while building this platform, and how did you overcome those?
So, Gopika and I are both, don't have any tech background. We don't have really a business background as such. I know I said I ran an embroidery company, but I was more the creative person in that company. So our background isn't tech, or how to run an organization isn't something that comes naturally to us. So that was, just understanding tech. Luckily for us, we have a great tech partner who works with us very closely. But even, when he's explaining stuff, just to understand how that logic works, when we're planning, creating the app in itself, I mean, all of that has been really sort of mind expanding for us, because it's all jumping into areas that we knew nothing about. We are suddenly, talking tech language in a way that we would never have dreamt of earlier. In terms of challenges, I think we really, we're honest about what we can't do, and we reach out for help. And what's been amazing is that, people around us have believed in what we're trying to do and have offered us help. So we've had people, just put their hand up, help us with all kinds of things. The UI, UX, someone just sort of happily did it for us, because we needed that help. We've had people help us with the logo. We have help from family who's sort of pitched in. Gopika's husband is a lawyer, so as far as legal stuff goes, we can run stuff by her. My husband has some business background, so we kind of can go to him for that kind of help. We have friends who kind of advise us when we are stuck on things and we need to think through things. So it's really like sort of, we have built a community around us that has been helping us, and because they believe that this is something important and they really want to make sure that it succeeds. So yeah, I think I would say we've sort of overcome the challenges by sort of reaching out into our own community, who has been very happy to help.
I know you both gave many examples of this earlier, but I just wanted to ask again, is there any specific success story or feedback from a user that has been particularly meaningful to you?
So I'll share what happened with me at a therapy center. I had gone to Delhi, and I was talking to a bunch of parents at a therapy center in Gurgaon. And while I was helping them with the sign-in process, and it was really amazing to see how, as they signed in and their suggested profiles popped up, they fed in their address, and the suggested profiles pop up based on age and location. And suddenly, two parents who were sitting next to each other, they must have come into the therapy center, and just waited in the waiting room, but not really connected, realized that they were neighbors and they lived next door to each other in adjoining buildings or in the same area. And then they said, "Oh, wow, I didn't realize you lived here and you lived so close by." It was literally walking distance. And they said, "Why don't we meet tomorrow evening in the park with our children?" And so it was watching that match happening literally in front of my eyes, which was a beautiful feeling. So there have been many kind of cases like this. And people write into us saying that, I made a friend. We heard about somebody who found a boyfriend, but then Unfortunately, the relationship ended as well, but it all happened on thanks to BuddyUp. So those kind of stories do filter in, and we're really happy to hear those stories as well.
Yeah, I guess it's early days for us. We're just 4 months old. So, I think even in I mean, today we're at about 2,500-ish users,
Yeah.
out of which 50% would be in the caregiver population with caregiver accounts, and 50% would be self-users. So in terms of numbers, I think it'll take a while for those numbers to expand. I mean, we're kind of, as the app kind of gets people hear, more and more people hear about it. We're not doing this in a big splash. We're not like, it's a sort of bootstrapped venture. Both of us are, doing this in a very, letting it grow very in a small and organic manner. So we, I think, for those stories to emerge, I'm sure they will, but it'll be in the months to come. There are a few anecdotally, but we hope to hear a lot more as, time goes by. It's still early days for us.
As that, time goes by, what additional features or services would you like to, have on the platform, and how would you like it to evolve over the next 5 years?
So I think, as Monisha said, the dating slash matchmaking slash love vertical is something we are definitely looking at. And then again, based on user experience, we keep adding features. So we didn't start out with the voice note, but we had so many visually impaired users who said, please, can put in voice notes, because we find it easy. So we put that in. We are constantly going back to our users, constantly listening to them and seeing what it is that they want us to introduce. I think our next really big thing would be to probably introduce the ability to form groups on the chat so that they can, create their own communities. We want to see how we can take this to use the app to kind of really build communities so that people can connect. The idea is all about connection, right? It's that is the premise, that is the mission, that is the value which we hold true. And so how do we use the app to facilitate that connection? And of course, the dating vertical is something which is very exciting. We hope that people can find matches, because they're all really, really want to find that special someone. Everybody wants to find that special someone. And we hope that we can enable that for a lot of people.
What advice would you give to other entrepreneurs or individuals looking to create a meaningful special impact, especially in the neurodiversity space?
I would say, if you really, it sounds cliched, but if you're really passionate about something, just jump right in. I think, we often talk about the fact of where we are today. We thought, oh, we're going to make this app and we'll launch it and it'll all be good. And, not realizing that you have to give it your all. You have to, once you put something out there, that's just the start of your journey. You have to then, keep at it. It's like a baby that has to be nourished and constantly looked after. So don't do it unless you're 100% all in. And the second thing I would say is that, be prepared to constantly evolve as you go along, because you think one thing and then when you actually sort of jump off, things change. People, things that you might have thought were to be true turn out not to be true. So you have to be constantly able to kind of keep adjusting and pivoting and, doing things based off what you're seeing. No one knows anything. The world is such a, fast-paced, world today, that things are evolving constantly. Things that weren't there a month ago are available to you today. So you have to just be willing to be sort of quick on your feet to adjust and, sort of take on whatever things are thrown at you and, take those in your stride and kind of change as you need to as you go along.
And how do you think the general public, especially in India, can contribute to improving accessibility and inclusion for people with disabilities?
I think if I can say that honestly for me, when people talk about accessibilities, the first thing that comes to their mind is a ramp or a physically abled washroom kind of thing. And it starts there and it ends over there. But I think for me, when I think about accessibility and inclusion, I think it starts with the mind. And it starts with the mindset of being able to create spaces, whether they're online, offline, as well as products, whatever it is. When I talk about spaces, I'm talking in a very general term that can be used and enjoyed by everybody. And really, this goes to every aspect of life, whether it is an app, whether it is a movie, whether it is some sort of public service, whether it's transport, whatever it is. How can something be able to be where everybody who is around can use that? And unfortunately, that is not the case. We live in a very abled society. We very often don't think about disability. It's not convenient to think about, and hence everything that we make and design and produce is from that very able uh, point of view. So I think it's really starts with the mindset and the willingness to be able to create spaces, products, and whatever else for people with disabilities
So what
and all kinds.
I'll just add to what Gopika says. She's absolutely right. It is about the mind. It is about, the biggest thing is acceptance, right? I mean, it all comes from that's the first point of understanding, even for people with disabilities, families with disabilities, the society around there, that acceptance of the fact that the human condition is diverse, and there is a place for everyone, and everyone needs that, a place at the table, is something that we are gradually, in baby steps, coming to. Just I'm thinking about when I grew up, we rarely saw people with disabilities. Like, you just didn't see, people with disabilities on your streets, in restaurants, or um, even in schools. And that is changing. I mean, a few decades later, that has slowly been changing. And I think we're, at least, I would say, on a journey towards that uh, time
Yeah.
that it will be a lot better than it is today. But I think that acceptance of the fact that understanding of that, diversity is fantastic. It's not something, just because you're different doesn't mean you're bad. You're just different. And I think that understanding then,
Yeah.
triggers all the other kind of legislation, and everything else around it follows from that basic acceptance and um, understanding.
What would you both like to say to families who are just beginning their journey with a loved one who has a disability?
I think I would specifically address people on the autism spectrum because I think that is a unique kind of condition in a sense. And I think I would just say that, there's a very famous story which is associated with autism, which is talks about how you're planning to go to Paris or some other place and you've ended up in Holland, and you don't expect to see everything that you expect to see. The Eiffel Tower, you expect to see the Champs-Elysees, and here you are in Holland and you have a very different view. And it's not a bad view, it's just a different view. And I think that's exactly what I would try to say, that it may seem like a new place that you're entering as a parent of a child with a disability, or the caregiver of a child with a disability. It'll seem like you don't know where you ended up. It's a different kind of world. It's a different kind of life. It may be different, but it's not a bad life. I think having parented my son for 20 years almost, 17 of which were in cognizance of the fact that he is autistic. I don't think it is a life I would change for any reason at all. I think the amount that he has added to our understanding of life, of empathy, of acceptance, just every aspect of life. I mean, he's a delight to parent. He's really made a difference to not only the life of my immediate family, but of our friends, of our extended family. So many people have learned from him, and I think that ripple effect has been really tremendous. So I think just totally accept, embrace, and love the child that you have. They are, after all, a child. And uh, you know everything doesn't have to be looked at from the spectrum of the spectrum. Just learn to enjoy them for who they are.
Yeah, I'll add to that, very similar to what Gopika just said. Um, our son, obviously, when he was born, diagnosed at birth with Down syndrome, it was a big shock, and we were all really like, shaken up and worried about the future that lay ahead for us. But again, similar to what she said, it's been fantastic. I wouldn't change it. If I had to do it again, I would do it all over again, exactly like this. And I would say to parents, the best thing that you can do for yourself is reach out to other parents. I think when I reached out to an older set of parents who had an older child with Down syndrome, and I saw them, they were like a regular family, just getting on with their life. It just like the cloud lifted from my head, and I said, okay, this is what life could look like. It's not doom and gloom, and it need not be. And I hope that today, 20 years later, with my son being older, people of with younger kids with disabilities will look at us just enjoying life, enjoying our son, enjoying our family life together, and think, okay, it's we can be there someday. It's hard. There's no denying that it's very hard, because you have an expectation about how your life is going to be, and then it turns out to be something different. So in that moment, it can be a shock. But I think if you see that life ahead, if you can just sort of hit a fast forward button and kind of look at, okay, that's what it's going to look like, maybe that will really help those early days when you might think that everything's a big struggle. Just reach out to form a community. It's going to be the best thing that you can do for yourself and for your child.
Ms. Kapoor, thank you so much for this wonderful conversation, and congratulations on all the amazing success and people you've managed to help so far. Thank you very much for what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a
Thank you for
pleasure to
having
talk to
us.
you.